I bet that jingle sparks great memories into many of you. I love Sonic Adventure, even though yes, it does have flaws, but recently many people have turned their backs on the adventure duology, stating that they weren't very good. Stories with big enough holes that even diehard Sonic fans can't defend. So in response, I want to cover both games to really make you remember the spark and charm that these games and only these games had, for better, and to be fair, for worse. This is Remembering Sonic Adventure. Enjoy. Sonic had a rough 3D transition. Said every YouTuber ever. But another thing I feel has been running to the ground about this game is the history behind it. So let's do a speedrun, shall we? Following the success of Sonic 3 and Knuckles, the word was throbbing for the next console-pushing experience. With releases of games such as Sonic 3D Blast, Sonic R, Sonic the Fighters, the closest thing we ever had to a proper 3D experience was in Sonic Jam, a collection of games. Within the collection, there was a mini hub world that you could just exist in. It wasn't much, but with the start of the 6th generation, we saw Sonic Adventure, which was surely an adventure. Finally, the fans had a proper, non-spin-off Sonic game to put their hands on. Now, I haven't touched the 5th generation Sonic games, and that's not to say they were bad. They just aren't the core Sonic, right? Just because they're spin-offs doesn't mean they're necessarily bad, right? They're not mainstream. So yeah, that's a quick summary of the history for Sonic Adventure. Now, I skipped a lot such as Sonic Extreme's cancellation, and that's because I want to get into the meat and potatoes of this retrospective. And also, I feel like everyone has heard about the story of Sonic's mid-90s trouble. But if you haven't, I implore you to go explore YouTube, because I know there are a lot of videos that cover the subject way more in depth than I have here. But getting back on track, let's talk about the other aspects to Sonic Adventure outside the gameplay. Those being the production and the story. The story truly picks up with the ancient echidnas way back in the day. They also happen to be related to Knuckles. Anyway, they are power hungry and seek to use the Master Emeralds for themselves. Chaos, the protector of the Master, Chaos, and also these adorable living Tamagotchis, the Chow, which FYI is the word chaos without the S if you couldn't tell. And also, Chaos happens to be the water god of destruction, and absorbs the power of the emeralds, wiping out the echidnas. The daughter of the chief then seals herself and Chaos inside the Master Emerald. Millennia later, Dr. Eggman, and yes, Dr. Eggman as a name is canon now. I guess in the West, he had been known as Dr. Robotnik up until this point. I use the names interchangeably, so it's up to you if you like this change. Anyway, he discovers this and goes to Angel Island again and breaks the emerald, fracturing the pieces around the world and freeing both Tikal and Chaos. Knuckles witnesses this, and his mission is to get the fractured shards to reassemble the emerald. Soon after, Sonic fights Chaos for the first time, and then meets up with Tails. Sonic and Tails' story revolves around fetching the Dragon Balls, Chaos Emeralds, but then immediately losing them to the Doctor. Amy, returning from Sonic CD, gets a nice redesign and seemingly lives in Station Square, the place all this stuff is happening. She finds a bird, then the first of the E-Series created by Robotnik starts chasing her. Why she doesn't just let the bird fly away? Well, I don't fucking know. Then Big the Cat has the literal opposite issue of trying to find and get ready to hear that a lot if you're going to play this game. Then there is E102 Gamma, the third of the E-Series created by Eggman. Each of these characters play a role, whether minuscule or not, all in the overarching plot. Sonic is obviously the main character, and luckily you can play him right off the bat, so no Mega Man X7 shenanigans. So he beats Chaos in the end. Tails tags along with Sonic until the end where he has to try to stop Eggman from bombing Station Squares, which he fails, but then it turns out to be just a dud. Knuckles just reassembles the emerald, but beyond that, the other characters didn't need to be in the game. Amy, Big, and Gamma were unknown to the players back then, but also have no real impact on the story. Yeah, cool, Amy saves a bird, so does Sonic every time he beats a robot. Oh, Cat looks for his frog, cool. And Gamma? Actually, Gamma's pretty cool. He's like Android 16 basically. Hey, editing Game Hunter here. Quick little side note about Gamma is that one of his first scenes, he literally opens up and sees his brother Beta getting torn apart. That's gonna be horrifying. That's like in Rocky Horror Picture Show, where Rocky has like been born for like 2 hours and yet he's being exposed to all of these things. So quick little side note about his character, that's kind of freaky. Really, this story is a nothing burger. I'm not going to be hypercritical like Some Call Me Johnny. Chaos and more Angel Island history is dope, but outside of that, I don't care. But I want to discuss the villains right now. Eggman is just as scheming as ever. He plots Knuckles against Sonic, again, And also, he tells the gang that he's going around to collect the emeralds so that they can get up for him, just so he can rob them in a swift motion. His narcissism is even stretching all the way to his egg fleet, where he has a deluxe-sized pool with palm trees to even a whack-a-mole game that gives you points for smashing Sonic and stalls it for hitting himself. Even though I'm about to give this game shit for the voice acting, Eggman's is by far the best, and actually puts an emphasis on his demeanor. One of the best Robotnik depictions yet.
You fool! Away, before I make mincemeat out of you.
But also Chaos. Chaos reminds me heavily of Cell from, you guessed it, Dragon Ball. Just without the mouth. He has to collect emeralds to slowly go into his perfect form. But also, he is just an imposing force. He doesn't speak once, but you feel the power he has. I just got one question. If Chaos is the water god of destruction, that either means one of two things. That there's other elemental gods of destruction, such as like fire, water, or fire, or things like that. Or it means there's a water god of creation. So, just a little bit of food for thought there. But now, let's talk about the dreaded production value. Ah! Yeah, there's no defending this. I want to defend this game, but voice acting, animations, and especially cutscenes really put a dent in this game's score. I'm not going to shine too much light on this issue, but yeah, I'm just going to play some examples for those of you who haven't played this game.
I miss the good old days. Hanging out with my hero, Sonic. Chasing bad guys. And blowing them away.
Glad I found you. Oh yeah! Whoa! Something bugging you? You must be kidding! You're right, my friend, so here we go!
See, now you get the picture. And to be honest, those were the biggest issues with this game. And there's no defending this. Crash and Spyro had far better animations than this game. And games like Metal Gear had superior voice acting and stories. But to be honest, I never had a real issue with this, because there's charm in this junk. Jank and charm is all over this game, and I love it for it. And really, that's just the point of this duology of videos. Loving what's imperfect. Not every game is an absolute masterclass of art, but it really just has to be fun and put a smile on my face. And if you guys watched my playthrough, this game certainly did 24/7. Except for Fighting Chaos 6, that shit was boring! But I mean, I grew up playing both adventure games and Sonic 4 on my PlayStation. But also, I have fond memories of playing Sonic Generations with my uncle on his 360. Or even long car rides being passed with Sonic Rivals 2 on my PSP. I adore Sonic, and many people thought the opposite after watching my Sonic 3 and K review, because I was a bit more harsh on it than others. But that's just not the case. Sonic Adventure 1 is truly, mesmerizingly great. It leaves such a big imprint in my memory, even though I personally never got to Casinopolis when I was younger. Now I want to cover one last thing before going to the next section. The music is debatable in this game. I feel the idea behind giving every character their own vocal theme was a great idea. But many of these songs were just annoying, especially because the game had such a bad habit of repeating every song every 2 seconds. Such as the main menu. This shit repeats every time you select something. I cannot tell you how many times I've heard or the beginning of Tails' theme. Maybe the music itself isn't exactly the issue, but really the repetition. Either way, if I hear that damn Mystic Ruins OST again, I'm breaking something. But enough of looking back, now it's time to talk about No, this isn't a piece about my transition from Catholicism to Scientology. No, I'm not actually a Scientologist, this is just for a joke. But nonetheless, Mario had a perfect transition from 2D to 3D. So one must ask the question if Sonic did. I'd say he didn't. This gameplay is the only way I could see classic games in 3D. And oh ho, let me tell you, this spin dash, remember that thing? What is back with some sort of vengeance because it got pissed off in Sonic CD. But here you go so fast. And you can spam it while running, so it keeps just going faster and faster. You can just up and break the game's level design with this move. So the base of Sonic's movement is already there. What about the levels? Well, the levels aren't as sprawling as, let's say, Carnival Night, but it still has multiple routes. The top path is still harder to stay on. Some power-ups are still there. The lightning bubble returns, but sadly no double jump. What replaces it is the returning homing attack from 3D Blast. This is really helpful, with no waiting animations like Sonic Forces. Outside of that, we get a few power-ups. When I say a few power-ups, I mean the same power-up that gets less and less useless. The Lightspeed ability does two things, the Lightspeed Dash and Lightspeed Attack. Sue Sega on false advertising because there is nothing Lightspeed about either of those. You have to hold down the spin dash for what feels like the length of your average college lecture until you can, are you ready for it? Travel along in trail rings, but jankily. I don't think I have footage of me flying towards nowhere in my playthrough, but trust me, you will go flying because they didn't fully perfect the lightspeed technology. But then you get even less useful ability, that being the lightspeed attack, which I used once on Red Mountain I think it was, and didn't even work at all. But don't let my talking points make it seem like Sonic is poo-poo, because let me tell you, you go stupid fast if you know what you're doing. I was going slow, but that's because I'm just slow in the head sometimes. And those levels are equally as great. Emerald Coast, Windy Valley, Ice Cap, and my favorites, Speed Highway and especially Red Mountain, even though I don't like the first music there. But all of these are fantastic, with maybe Twinkle Park, which is basically Peach's Castle from Mario 64, and the Final Zone are decent too. All of these are very memorable with great environments, each very distinct from one another. I will say some stages look great like Coast and Valley, but the lack of textures is very apparent in this game. Now I understand the graphical quality of then isn't what it is now, but nearly all animations are just ugly. But also the low poly count when compared to a game such as the precursor Legacy, which was a launch title for the PS2, which by the way I've reviewed on my channel on this video, so go check it out. It is incomparable. And to that, you might say, well, it's a Sonic game, so they had to lower the graphics to keep up the loading times, which is actually a really good point. But I don't know, Jak 1 had no loading times, and shit, Jet Set Radio looked great and was on the Dreamcast, so there wasn't much of an excuse there. But again, the game is fine looking, so whatever. Here is the start of a small problem rant. Okay, ready? The minigames, Skydeck, Lost World, Hub Worlds, and every single boss fight sucks. There, I said it. I literally didn't even have to play during the Sky Chases acts until the super easy boss fight in Act 2. And speaking of easy boss fights, nearly every boss fight was super easy or hyper annoying. The annoying ones were Chaos 4 and 6 because you have to fight them like 3 or 4 times throughout the game with no changes. Then the Egg Viper is just long and annoying. I kept dying in that fight due to some bullshit. Skydeck just sucks as a level idea. Lost World is annoying as fuck. And finally, a thing most people don't actually have an issue with is the mini-maps. Most people find them harmless, but I think they are super annoying. Legit, half my playthrough is trying to find the next level, and that's mainly due to one thing: the stones. Many levels require the player to grab a totem, stone, or keycard to go to the next level. Sometimes they are shown in the cutscenes, but because the animations and voice acting is bad, sometimes they are shown in the cutscenes, but because the animation and voice acting is so bad, I kept skipping them. Or other times it's just on you. This is so infuriating. Legit worst part of the game. The idea of a hub world isn't bad, like the one in Shadow Generations looks promising. So it's not the hub world that's an issue, it's the damn stones that are horse mahogany. But I promise not to make this review negative, so let's make things brighter. Now, what's the difference between, let's say, Sonic Adventure and a generic 3D Sonic game like Sonic Forces? Well, the adventure aspect this game came up with is very unique. What makes these two games adventure games is the fact that there's a plot involving each playable character, and each character has their own playstyle. But keep in mind, what makes a game's side content good is whether or not the roots are still the roots of the base game. Like, you don't want to have a platform that has, you know, shooting or God of War gameplay. Oh. Sonic, for example, is about high-speed platforming and exploring, not precise jumps like Mario, which I felt was the biggest flaw for Sonic 1. So each variation of adventure's playstyle should relate to either speed, platforming, or exploration. And here with Tails is exactly that. His levels are about racing Sonic to the end. Check out this gameplay.
Come on, Tails! Hooray!
Yeah, it's pretty easy. Tails only has about half of Sonic's levels, and those levels are about half as long. Tails got a Tails attack, bet you didn't see that coming, and his flight has also returned. And at times I even felt faster as Tails' Prower than I did with Sonic, which was very surprising to say the least. Anyway, he gets one upgrade that lets him do an endless Tails spin that is really useful against his final boss. Next up,
Okay, let's go!
the Echidna is back in blood, and with all of his abilities also coming back, those being flight and also Spider-Man time. But sadly, these areas aren't nearly as enjoyable as in SA2. I haven't mentioned this, but each character goes through the same levels. I'm pretty sure it's around 11. Sonic goes through 9, and the second longest playthrough is with Knuckles. So sadly, the levels aren't tailored to each playstyle, which is pretty disheartening, but nonetheless, for the most part, it works out fine. But Knuckles' levels take a minute to do. He is secluded to a large part of Sonic's levels, such as the second half of Speed Highway or Red Mountain, but they fumble the ball in his later stages, Casinopolis, Skydeck, and Lost World, the worst levels in the game. What they should have done is maybe Ice Cap in this area, and definitely in the castle part of Twinkle Park. But either way, it's not the worst with Knuckles because he has flight. His levels consist of him going around to find 3 shards, whether by beating it out of an enemy, by finding it, or just digging. And again, this applies to what I said, this is revolving around exploration. And it works. Somewhat. Again, poopy boss fights, but still enjoyable. Next up, Amiros. Her levels are like if you played those Shadow Mario levels in some of those newer Mario games, you are getting chased by Zero. So the objective is to A, live, B, escape.
Simples.
And she has a cool hammer bounce, and that's really about it. Next up, Big. Yeah, so this is where a lot of people get lost. Like I said, he's looking for his so his levels are just about fishing, a true Sonic staple. And these are just awful. The trick is to pull down when Froggy bites it, and that's the only tip I have. I mean, I guess he's strong, and yet weak-minded. He's like the last brother in Goonies, just there because... Actually, I don't think either of them know why. Gamma. Gamma is just the prototype gameplay for Eggman and Tails. He is really fun. I love it when you get the hover ability too. He's really simple, just a few bit of platforming and shooting, and he's also got a timer which I didn't even know about until the final level. Literally just running and gunning. Again, enjoyable. And he does have a fun final boss unlike these losers. And that's it. That's the game. Wink. This is the final chapter. After beating the game with each character, a final story happens where you can play through the opening cinematic where Station Square was engulfed by water. And you have to literally go through chaos to win. And I was first exposed to this fight through Generations, and this shit does not disappoint. It's semi-challenging. There is one last final way to play the game that really makes the rest of the game seem worthless in comparison. No, not that guy, he's just a skin. But really, everything I just talked to you guys about was just the filler content. Just in case you wanted some stupid high-speed world-saving antics. Sonic Adventure is really a Japanese RPG Tamagotchi simulator. But really, there is an entire Chow world that you can treat, train, and grow your Chow. Now, I was not interested in this, even when I was younger. But it does go pretty in-depth with the mechanics. Overall, it's fun, but not nearly as in-depth as it is in Sonic Adventure 2. But there are actually some more things for you guys to munch on now too. Now, I didn't specify this, but I played Sonic Adventure DX on Steam. Wait, before you crucify me, give me a chance. I couldn't get this game to properly emulate, so I just bit the bullet and bought the game when it was on sale for like $2. Many people say the original Dreamcast is the best way to play this game because of the better models and lighting. But the thing is, that obviously Sega stopped being a console company after that, so they ported both adventure games to Nintendo. The GameCube got Sonic Adventure DX Director's Unrated Raw Extended Snyder Cut, and it comes with many different textures and models. I do have to agree with the public here. I do not appreciate these models, which means it's gotta mean something when I eventually reach Sonic Heroes. But that's for later down the line. But what comes with this edition are trials, missions, and other things. I'm gonna keep it $1.50. I did not bother with these because I had to write the script you guys are hearing right now. But I do know after getting all 130 medals, which you will get for beating levels, raising Chow, exploring, etc., you can play as Metal Sonic, which is just a reskin of Sonic, but nonetheless, all still really cool. Finally, like I said, I played this game on Steam, and many people say that Steam and the PS3 ones are the worst ones to play, which I find humorous, because those are the only versions I've truly played. And there's a fan mod, which I didn't use because I couldn't get it to work, and I don't have time to troubleshoot right now. And with that being said, let's get to the finale, shall we?
Hey, I'll play with you some other time.
Sonic Adventure, in all ways, is a great game. It's a perfect 3D transition from the prior entries. This game is great. And even though there is jank, it's too charming for me to give a shit about the shockingly low production value. So with that being said, go out there and go play some Sonic Adventure if possible. Or maybe you could watch my playthrough on this game. Or maybe my Sonic 3 Knuckles review will interest you more. But either way, I hope I see... Let me rephrase that. Anyway, I hope I see you fellow and fellowites next time. Peace.